Okay, let's talk about writing a research proposal. I know, it can feel like you're staring up at this giant, impossible mountain. But what if I told you there's a map? In the next few minutes, we're going to lay out a clear blueprint that turns that whole daunting task into a journey you can actually manage. Let's dive in. So, are you staring at a blank page right now, feeling totally overwhelmed? Look, you are not alone. That's such a common feeling for students. It doesn't matter what level you're at. The good news is you're in exactly the right place to get unstuck and really start building some momentum. And this quote from Dr. Amina Yunus, wow, it just gets right to the heart of it, doesn't it? A research proposal isn't just some annoying hurdle you have to clear. No, it's the actual blueprint for your entire project. Think of it like this. It's your map, it's your main argument, and it's your promise of everything that's to come all rolled into one. All right, so where do we even begin? A lot of people think you start with a title or maybe the methodology. Nope. You start with the most fundamental question of all. Why? Why does your research even need to exist? And that, my friends, brings us to the all-important concept of the research gap. So what is a research gap? Well, you can think of it like a hole in what we currently know. It's that one unanswered question or that problem nobody's tackled yet. And you better believe this is the very first thing that supervisors and reviewers look for. Why? Because it justifies your entire project. Now, this is a super important distinction, and honestly, it trips up so many people. You don't start with your research aim, the what you plan to do. You have to start with the gap. That's the why. It's the whole reason your work is necessary in the first place. Get this right, the gap before the aim, and I'm telling you, you are halfway there. Okay, so how on earth do you find this elusive gap? It's actually a pretty straightforward three-step process. First, start with something you're genuinely passionate about. What really gets you excited? Second, dive into the current conversations in that field. What are the big trends, the hot debates happening right now? And then step three, you hit the books and the journals with a really targeted literature review to find what hasn't been said yet. And that brings us perfectly to what I like to call the engine room of proposal writing, the literature review. Now, this is so much more than just summarizing what other people have done. It is the number one tool you're going to use to discover, to define, and ultimately to prove that your research gap is real and that it exists. There's a really powerful way to tackle this called Dr. Saeed's funnel approach. It's brilliant. You basically start super broad, right? Looking at the general field. Then you start to narrow your focus, zooming into a more specific area. And finally, you get laser focused, pinpointing the exact topic where your research gap is hiding. It's just a simple, structured way to handle what can feel like a massive, overwhelming amount of information. So how do you actually do that? Well, here's a super practical four-step guide. Step one, find some samples. We're talking 3 to 10 really high-quality, recent papers that are kind of similar to your topic. Use them as models. Step two, structure your review. Use those samples to map out your headings to get a sense of the flow. Think of it as your storyboard. Step three, now you search for literature. With that clear structure, your search will have a real purpose. And finally, step four, and this is the big one, you have to write a critical review. And this right here might be the most important takeaway for your entire literature review. Please, do not just write a shopping list of summaries. This person said this, then that person said that. No, your job is to be a detective, not a court reporter. You need to weave together a story from all the clues you're finding in the literature. Synthesize different sources, group them around common themes, compare their findings, contrast them. Tell a coherent story about where your field is at right now. Okay, so you've found your gap. You've built this amazing foundation with a solid literature review. Now it's time to actually construct the proposal itself. We're officially moving from the why to the how. But before we dive into all the different sections, keep this number in mind. About 2,500 words. That's the target Dr. Jonas suggests. And look, the goal here is absolutely precision and focus. It is not about volume. You've got to be concise and make every single word count. And here it is, the blueprint. A really strong proposal is generally going to have these 8 core sections. From the title all the way down to the bibliography, each piece builds on the one before it, creating this complete, really convincing argument for why your project deserves to exist. Now, pay close attention here because the methodology section, this is where your proposal gets real. It's just not enough to say what methods you're going to use, you have to justify them. Why did you choose this approach over another? What are its potential limitations? And more importantly, how are you going to deal with them? And the big one, how exactly will you analyze the data you collect? This is the section where you prove you've actually thought the entire project through from start to finish. And please, whatever you do, don't overlook the timeline. Look, it doesn't have to be perfect, let's be honest. It's definitely going to change. But just creating a realistic plan, it shows your supervisor something really important, that you get the scope and the scale of a PhD project. It's a huge sign of foresight and professionalism. I love this way of thinking about it. Just like your timeline maps out the future of your project, your bibliography maps out its past. This is not the place to list every single thing you've ever read. Not at all. It's a carefully curated list, maybe 5 to 10 of the most essential papers. These are the foundational works that really define your research gap and place your project right in the middle of that big academic conversation. All right, let's bring this all home. When you follow these steps, you're doing so much more than just filling out a form or checking a box. You are truly bringing your research idea to life, right there on the page. Just think about the journey we've mapped out here. You start with that initial spark of curiosity, right? Then you find a genuine gap in what the world knows. You build a rock-solid argument with your literature review, and then you lay out a practical, convincing plan to fill that gap. What you have now isn't just a proposal, it's a blueprint for success. So as you go off and start writing, I want to leave you with one final thought. A truly great research project, it does more than just answer a question. It starts a whole new conversation. So the real question is, what conversation are you going to start?